سلام، خوش اومدید به یه ویدیو دیگه از کانال ردباز. جونم براتون بگه که من واقعا نمیخواستم توی این ویدیو مقدمه سلام علیک اینتروی چیزی داشته باشیم. دوست داشتم که یه راست بریم سر اصل ماجرا، از اونجایی که میدونم تک تکتون بی صبرانه منتظرید که خود مصاحبه رو ببینید، ولی لازم دونستم یه سری حرفا رو قبل از شروع کار بزنم. و از اونجایی که تقریبا الان فکر کنم 4.5-5 روزه که من کلا خواب درست حسابی نداشتم به خاطر مصاحبه و تدارکاتش و ادیت و این داستانا. فکر کنم تقریبا 4-5 ساعت خوابیدم طی 4-5 روز گذشته. دیگه این قسمت اولش رو ادیت نمیزنم، خودمونی هرچی از دل و ذهنم بیاد و بهتون میگیم و میریم سر اصل ماجرا. خب پس اگه کمی کاستی نمیدونم این پرده سبز و ریخت مناسب و اینا دیگه به بزرگی خودتون ببخشید. بعد جونم براتون بگه که مصاحبه با آقای لاپلنت عزیز دل، فردی بسیار متشخص، محترم، خاکی، فروتن، گل و واقعا هر چیز ازش تعریف کنم کمه که خودتون حین مصاحبه قطعا میبینید چه شخصیت فوق‌العاده‌ای داره. مصاحبه با ایشون انجام میشه. صداپیشه کاراکتر دوک توی رزیدنت ایول 8 یا رزیدنت ایول ویلیج هستن و کسایی که استریم منو دیدن از این بازی میدونن که من چقدر با این کاراکتر ارتباط برقرار کردم، چقدر دوستش دارم و چقدر برام کاراکتر خوبی بود. به نظرم بخوام واقعا از صمیم قلب راستشو بگم، تو کل رزیدنت ایول ها، تو کل فرانچایز رزیدنت ایول کاراکتر محبوب من یه دونه بخوام انتخاب کنم دوک قطعا صدر جدول خود دوک اون کاراکتر محبوب. به خاطر همین این اتفاق که من تونستم با صداپیشه این کاراکتر مصاحبه کنم خیلی اتفاق بزرگیه بر من و واقعا باعث افتخار منه. تا عمر دارم به این قضیه افتخار میکنم، به خودمون افتخار میکنم، به تک تک شما که از اول راه همراه من بودید که برسیم به همچین جایی و بتونم همچین اتفاقی رو شکل بدم افتخار میکنم. دم تک تکتون گرم، دم خودمون گرم، بابا باریکلا به هممون و مرسی. این قطعا تازه شروع راهه، قطعا خیلی از این بالاتر قراره بریم، خیلی کار خفن‌تر قراره انجام بدیم و مسابقه بیشتری انجام بدیم. مسابقه زیادی من قبلا فکر کنم 5 تا صداپیشه رو قبل از این باشون صحبت داشته بودم که اونا مسابقه یه طرفه بوده، یعنی من این سه چیز ازشون پرسیده بودم، یه سری چیزا بهشون گفته بودم بگم و اونا توی یه ویدیو کوتاه برای من گفته بودن. 4 تا از صداپیشه‌های بازی ردمپشن 2 و آخریش هم که یه ویدیویی بود که صداپیشه ایول توی اساسینز کرید برای من فرستاده بود و درباره نمیدونم دیدن ویدیوی من و نمیدونم زیرنویس کردن و این حرفا. که جونم براتون بگه که اونا به اون صورت استقبال نشد، یعنی واقعا فکر می‌کردم به استقبالش بیشتر از این باشه، بیشتر به رشد کارم کمک کنه، اما خب نشد. امیدوارم یکی بشه، ولی خب اگرم نشه واقعا بازم میگم چیزیه که من بهش افتخار میکنم و به اینکه تونستم در کنار شما به همچین چیزی برسم، همچین کار بزرگی رو برای کامیونیتی فارسی زبون، برای خودم، برای شما، برای یوتیوب فارسی انجام بدم افتخار میکنم تا آخر عمر و چیز واقعا ارزشمندی برای من. امیدوارم برای شما هم همینطور باشه و امیدوارم که از مصاحبه لذت ببرید. جونم براتون میگه که من واقعا استرس داشتم، استراب داشتم حین مصاحبه و در کنار شروع اشتیاق بسیار بالایی داشتم که این حس و حال عجیب و غریب، این همه حس و حال متفاوت با همدیگه کلا حس عجیبی داده و به من اصلا داغون بودم، گیج بودم، نمیدونستم داستان چیه. حین مصاحبه اولین بارم بود که اینجوری مصاحبه میکردم، اونم با همچین شخصی که خب آدم معروفیه دیگه قاعدتا. یه خورده سخت بود و توپق اینا زیاد داشتم، مثلا خیلی جاها چون نویز ساپرشن میکروفون منم زیاده، بعد خیلی جاها صدای منو اصلا نمیگرفت، شما خیلی آروم، اصلا صدام در نمیومد، بعضی جاها صدام در نمیومد و صدای من خیلی آروم بود، میکروفون اصلا نمیگرفت. بعد بعضی جاها مثلا اشکالات گرامری دارم، ولی خب با تمام اینا به نظرم حاصل کار چیزی شده که من بازم میگم تا آخر عمرم میتونم بهش افتخار کنم. امیدوارم که شما هم همچین حسی رو نسبت به کار داشته باشید و خوشتون بیاد. عشق منید، دمتون گرم. واقعا اگه شما نبودید من قطعا نمیتونستم همچین کاری بکنم، اصلا چه دلیلی داشت که همچین کاری رو بکنم. و بهتون قول میدم شما عزیزان دلی که دارین این ویدیو رو میبینید، به تک تکتون که از اون مصاحبه اول با جان ماستون تا این مصاحبه همراه من بودید و حمایت کردید و این مسیری رو که طی کردیم و در کنار من بودید، بهتون قول میدم که این تازه شروع کاره، قطعا کار خفن‌تری انجام میدیم، قطعا پله ها رو یکی یکی طی میکنیم و خیلی 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 کارهای خفن‌تری تو راهه، بهتون قول میدم. و اینکه امیدوارم خوشتون بیاد دیگه. دمتون گرم، لایک کنید، به دوستانتون معرفی کنید، کامنت بذارید، برای دوک، برای آقای ارن توی کامنت ها قلب بذارید، اسمش رو بنویسید، قلب بذارید کنارش، حمایت کنید، عشق بورزید. هرچی حمایت بیشتر باشه قطعا از این اتفاقا قراره بیشتر بیفته، کمک میکنه به اینکه این اتفاقا بیشتر بیفته. و همین دیگه. واقعا من خوشحالم از این قضیه، با اینکه میگم اولین مصاحبه‌ام بود و قطعا اونطوری که دوست داشتم بی‌نقص باشم توی مصاحبه نبودم، ولی خب واقعا چیزی شده حاصل کار که میتونم بهش افتخار کنم، با افتخار بگم که بهش افتخار میکنم و امیدوارم شما هم همچین حسی رو داشته باشید. بابا باری کلا به تک تکتون، حمایت کنید، تبلیغ این کار رو انجام بدید. دمتون گرم. اگه دوست داشتید، اگه هم دوست نداشتید که هیچی، و لایک یادتون نره، کامنت یادتون نره، شیر کنید. مرسی. بریم سراغ اصل ماجرا دیگه. دمتون گرم. The very first question that I want to ask is, how did you end up in Resident Evil Village? Did they offer you the role, or did you audition for it? And before all this, did you have any familiarity with the whole world of Resident Evil and its characters, its backstory, all that?
Yeah, well, it's funny. The minute I found out what project this was, I was suddenly projected back in time 25 years to being a little kid in a sleeping bag with my friends playing the very first Resident Evil and being absolutely terrified the whole time. So I'm very familiar with this franchise, and I've been playing the games pretty much, ever since they came out. And so the interesting thing about this, and I'll make this kind of brief, but in Resident Evil 7, the girl, the woman that plays Marguerite Baker, Sarah, I've known her since high school.
Oh.
I had French class together when she was a junior in high school and I was a senior.
Way.
And so we kept in touch over the years, but we're both from Seattle, Washington, up in Washington State. And so when I moved down to California, it was a few years later that she moved down and she worked on Resident Evil, and I found out that she worked on it and called her up and said, "That's incredible. I love those games and I can't wait to play it, and congratulations." And she was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And we would hang out and catch up, and then years later she called me and said, after the 7th one, I started I'm going to be in the 8th one, but I've also been sort of working behind the scenes, and they asked me if you know anybody that you could suggest to come in and audition for these parts. And she suggested a bunch of people, and I just went in and auditioned for it. And when I auditioned for it, these games, the interesting thing about these games is they're always evolving, they're always changing. So if they write a script, in the pre-production stages, they're constantly changing it. So when I auditioned for it, the part in the beginning of the game where you walk into that cabin and suddenly that guy comes out with a shotgun, and running around. Well, it wasn't that scene. It was a different scene, but it was kind of similar. Like, the character comes in, you see a guy, he talks to you, and then something scary happens. So I auditioned with that scene to play that part. And I was very lucky because after the audition, I audition for things all the time. It seems like my job, all I ever do is just try to get work. And so I auditioned, and then I just kind of forgot about it and went about my day or whatever. And then I got an email from Sarah, and she said, "Well, that was a great audition. Good job. They're not going to give you the part." And I was like, "Oh, that's okay. Like, that's, that happens all the time. And I don't take it personally." But then she said, "Because they want to save you for a bigger part. They think you're very good." And so I was like, and I've never heard that ever in my life, ever, for any reason. So I was like, okay. So then, a little while went by, and then I auditioned for it again. Now, the interesting thing to know about video games is that they are so secretive to the point where the lines that they give you to audition with, they're not going to be in the game. They've actually written a separate script just for the audition that's kind of like the character you're going to play, but not exactly, because they don't want any information to get out, which is very important, because that's the whole thing. These games are so highly anticipated. So I got this script, And the scene was kind of like, there's a, I can't really describe it. There was like a scene where I come in and I'm just sort of helping a guy on giving him advice. That was basically the scene. And when I did it with a really thick Eastern European accent and a very gravelly voice.
Mother Russia.
So the original voice sounded like this. Hello, how are you doing? Come in. And so that was what I did. And I did the motions, and they said he was a rather large character. So I did the, just kind of shifting back and scratching my stomach and like trying to turn around and do these things in my audition tape. And then, because they showed me a picture of the Duke originally, and I'll talk about that later. They showed me the original sort of like the preliminary design. And so I did that. And after that, I got a call and said, well, yeah, you got that part. And I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. That's amazing. And then a while went by, but I never knew that it was for Resident Evil, not once. So even when I got the part, I had no idea that it had anything to do with the Resident Evil franchise. And so then I found out later. And my first day of work, and this is a little bit further on. You asked me how I got the part, but the funny thing is that voice I did in the audition. When I went in for my very first day to record this thing, the very first line I said, "I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters. Anyone has heard of the likes of you," and did that, and then. The directors were like, "Oh, okay, that's great, but we don't really need him to have an Eastern European accent." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sorry, sorry." So then I said, "Mr. Winters, I've been waiting for you." And they said, "Oh, that's great. That's great. But it doesn't have to be so harsh. It doesn't have to be. It can be a little bit lighter, a little friendlier." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And you don't have to. It's kind of erudite, and it's like having a British accent without actually having a British accent. So then I said, "I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters. Anyone has heard of the likes of you." And that's where it landed. That's where it stayed the whole rest of the time I was working. That's kind of how the voice was created. Because a lot of times people think that the actor creates the voice on their own, and then they come in and they just wow everybody. And it's like, well, no, I mean, you make a choice as an actor before the fact. You make a choice of what you're going to do. But then when you go in there, you give it a shot. And if they like it, that's great. And if they don't, they'll change it in the moment. And it's a very collaborative. The directors and the actor come up with the voice and the character right in the room, right there. So it's really kind of exciting because when you're on your way, your first day, you're like, well, I have an idea of what I'm going to do, but what is this actually going to turn into? And apparently what it turned into was a really great character that everybody loves. And I'm very grateful for that.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. And so you're a gamer yourself, right? As you said. And what kind of games are you into, and what kind of games are you planning to be, or do you want to be next in the future?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to games, that I remember when I was a little kid, the platform games, Super Mario and things like that, they were very difficult for me. I was terrible at them, so I was always the little kid in the room where all the older kids were playing, and they would just have to watch. But then once these games started coming out where you could sort of change the difficulty level, you could play it casual, which is what I played Resident Evil on, you can bet, because I'm not very good at video games, despite the fact that I like them. And I think the thing about it is, I did a video game a while ago where it was a VR game. It was for PlayStation. And when I did the game, they sent me a VR helmet as like a gift for doing the game. And I was like, oh, that's really nice. But I didn't have a PlayStation at the time. So because of that, I went out and bought a PlayStation. So I'm actually kind of late to some of these games. I haven't really been a lifelong gamer, but the games that I like playing, I love first person shooter games, and I love open world games, particularly like Red Dead, something like that. I love games that have a lot of variety and have a lot of things to do, like a lot of tasks to do. I've never really been into some of the sort of like Wizards and Dragons type games, even though like some of those games are really amazing. The reason I'm not saying a lot of the names is because I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about other games. You know what I mean? Like in interviews, but you get the point. It's the idea of like, well, another one would be like Far Cry, for instance, because a game like that, it's open world. And there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different vehicles you can drive. You can drive many different cars, helicopters, planes. I like a variety like that. So what was neat about Resident Evil is that Resident Evil's always kind of been about, well, of course, it's scary stuff. But then it's also been about puzzles and mazes and everything's very cerebral. And I know that 7 was very much like that. It was really scary, but you were trying to kind of figure out puzzles in a scary environment. Whereas this one, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's open world, but it is kind of, you know what I mean? You've got this map, you know where you're supposed to go, and you can spend some time, killing chickens and bringing them to the Duke and having him make stuff for you. You know what I mean? So I mean, there's a lot of reasons I love this game, but I think that there's a great variety in enemies, a great variety in weapons, and a great variety in locations, going from the castle to then Moreau's sort of swamp, and then going to Donna Beneviento's house up on the hill. And I love it. I love it so much. There's so much to do that what's funny is I'm actually playing through it a second time because I missed a bunch of stuff. Because, at the end, they tell you what challenges you missed. Yeah. Excuse me. What challenges you missed, or like what treasure you didn't find, which I think is great because it gives you the opportunity to play these games over again, which I think everybody should. I mean, it's not like you just play it once and then that's it. You have endless amounts of entertainment, exactly. Going and finding little clues and things like that, So and then as far as what games I would like to be in, I have to say that it's very meaningful to me personally to be in a horror game, a scary game, because I happen to be a really big horror fan, movies and TV shows. Ever since I was a little kid, my dad was really into it. I collect a lot of horror action figures and things. So I just want to keep working in the horror genre, to be honest. I love it. And one of my aspirations is, because a lot of people probably don't realize this, in Resident Evil Village, I didn't do any motion capture. All the other characters did motion capture. The reason I didn't is because the Duke is so large, he doesn't move around. So I just did the voice. So what I'm excited for maybe in the future is to do some motion capture work, to actually put on the suit and actually be in the environment and do the fights and stuff like that. That's kind of my goal from here on out.
Yeah, that must be exciting. What is your favorite horror movie or series or books?
Yeah, no, I really love, just in general, I really love all the old Universal horror movies, the Frankenstein, Dracula, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Invisible Man, those ones. But as far as like a modern one, there's a really terrific film called The Thing by John Carpenter. And if any of you haven't seen it, it's about a bunch of researchers that are up in, I think it's either the South Pole or the North Pole, I can't remember, but they're up there at a research lab and they have all these dogs, and then this dog comes out of the tundra into their camp, this husky dog, and they're like, oh, we got to take care of this dog. So they bring the dog in, but there's something inside the dog, like there's like an alien or something, and it breaks out and starts terrorizing all these guys. It is such a great movie. It's one of my favorites. That's the first one that kind of comes to mind, but it's really hard to pick a favorite, as you know, when you say, oh, what's your favorite movie or what's your favorite game? Sometimes it's hard to sort of narrow it down to one, but yeah, I think The Thing. And if you haven't seen it, I mean, I don't know, if you haven't seen it, give it a watch.
I've watched the remake, but I haven't seen the original.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it would be good to check out that original. And actually what's funny is the one from the 80s that John Carpenter did is actually a remake of one that they did in the 50s. So the one you saw is the third one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because apparently I heard the remake didn't live up to the original. It wasn't as good.
Yeah, it did kind of. Well, and also too, when in the remake, they concentrated on where the dog came from.
Yeah.
That's kind of what they did in that movie. Is they had like what you saw in that movie that you saw is what happened at the camp before the dog actually left to go to the other camp. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think they might have kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that one, unfortunately. That's just my opinion.
All right. Towards the end of the game, Ethan asks the Duke who or what he is. And he responds that even he can't quite answer that. So if you were to describe the Duke, who he is, what he is, his purpose, and why he helps Ethan in a few sentences, what would you say?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that question a lot, and it's hard because there have been so many great YouTube videos about that subject. There have been so many, fan theories, and I've watched a lot of them, and they're all really good. I mean, they're all really, 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 really good. And so I don't want to steal from them. I don't want to sort of borrow from them. But what's interesting is, for an actor on some of these projects, they tell you what you need to know to do your character properly. They give you a little bit of backstory, or at least they don't really give you any backstory. They tell you, what the character is doing in the moment so that you can get the lines right. But it's amazing how much information I did not have, so that when I went and played it, I had no idea what was going on. But seeing the Duke's function, what I would like to think, because Miranda basically created that whole village, I would like to think that maybe he was somebody that lived in the village that was an alchemist. And when she took it over and when she made it into what it ended up being, that for some reason she couldn't kill him. She just couldn't kill him. So he's able to freely sort of roam around and help whoever needs helping. And of course, but he also doesn't have the power to do anything to her. So it's these there's Miranda and there's the Duke, and they're existing in this this world, but neither one can get rid of the other. So I think that the Duke, when he comes across Ethan, and I think that maybe the Duke has some kind of psychic stuff going on, that he knew Ethan was going to be there. So it's not a matter of manipulation, but it's a matter of he sees a chance to get rid of Miranda. And so he helps. This is just my opinion, of course. He helps Ethan to do that, because when the whole place explodes, you can rest assured that nothing happened to the Duke. I don't know that for sure. But if you take a gun and try to shoot Duke in the face, what's going to happen? If you try to throw a bomb at him, he's just going to laugh.
He just laughs.
Yeah. So, and I spent an entire day one time just sitting there looking at the monitor going, oh, whoa, just doing those sounds. And I was like, why am I doing this? And they said, because sometimes the players want to try to shoot the Duke or maybe throw bombs at him. And I'm like, oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. He's helping them out and they want to throw bombs at him. That's great.
Because I think they do that because in Resident Evil 4 they could actually kill the merchant. I think that's what I remember.
Really?
Yeah, they could shoot him. I don't know if they could kill him or not, but they could shoot him 100%.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I guess. Gosh, I don't remember that aspect.
Yeah, and I actually tried to shoot his feet, the Duke's feet, and he was laughing. He goes, better not waste bullets or something like that.
Better not waste bullets.
All right, so you kind of answered my next question as well. I was going to ask if, the game wants us to think that the Duke works for profit. Who is buying, he's selling. Whoever's a customer, he's going to help him out, right? He does business with anyone, doesn't matter if they're good or bad, but at the end of the game, when Mother Miranda rips out Ethan's heart, he goes back for Ethan's body, picks it up, and takes it all the way to Mother Miranda, even though he knows that Ethan's dying, and there's no way he can repay him. It's as if he has some kind of hidden agenda, as you said. And I was going to ask if I'm reading too much into it, or is there more than pure customer service involved here?
No, I think that you're not reading into it too much at all. I think that his motivations are certainly not purely benevolent to Ethan. Yeah. He might want to take over. He might want to. I mean, who knows? I watched one the other day, and when you're in the back of his carriage, and then you sort of look down, and there's that sigil, which sort of leads you to believe that somehow he was sort of involved with Miranda. There's so many different theories, and they're all so great. I like to think that maybe he was involved with Miranda one way or another, and then she maybe like cursed him in a way, but the curse sort of, because he even says like, even I can't answer that. So maybe she made him into something, but whatever she made him into, because he is an alchemist, he was able to make himself invincible, much to her chagrin. Who knows? And so, I don't like to think that he is conspiring with Miranda. I like to think that he was just out for himself and that he wanted to rid the land of all these lichens and all these monsters so that he could just live there himself, or in peace, or he could start something himself. Who knows? I mean, wouldn't it be great if he was the main villain of the next game? Mm. Again, that's just me saying because I want to work.
That would be awesome. Yeah. All right. The next question is about how every family has different houses, different families. They have their own sigil or symbol that kind of represents them. When the Duke's carrying Ethan in his carriage, for a very brief moment during the cutscene, we see the bottom of the carriage, and there's like a flag attached to it. That on top of it, there's a chubby owl that looks like it's representing the Duke himself, and there's a couple of horses on the sides, one on left, one on right. Looks like it's demonstrating his carriage, and at the bottom there's a line in French that says "L'argent défend la droite," something like that. I probably butchered the pronunciation, but anyway, it translates to "money defends the right," or "money is the law," basically, I think. Yeah. Do you think that Duke is a part of a house or family too? Or maybe that's how he knows the merchant from Resident Evil 4? Maybe they're both part of a bigger organization that's focused on customer service only, or something like that. Do you have any theories about that?
I really don't have any theories. I mean, it's staggering because it's kind of like when the game first came out, I was under the impression that it would take people a little while to get through it. Obviously, I grossly underestimated the game community because it seemed like the minute it came out, 3 hours after it came out, I would get messages on Instagram saying like, I just beat the entire game with only using knives. And I'm like, who are these people? These people are amazing at this stuff. And so, but now that people are having a chance to play it through a few times, they're starting to find these little Easter eggs, and they're starting to find these little sort of clues. And I just think it's great that, I mean, I'm sorry that I can't properly answer your question, but I do think it's great that Capcom doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that I'm keeping from you. You know what I mean? There's not like, and all these theories are so unbelievably creative that it's staggering to me. So yeah, seeing that sigil and seeing that it was, and so I think that instead of thinking what I think is happening, I always like to talk about what I want to be the case. And I like to think that of all the houses, maybe there was, the houses were created by Mother Miranda, and this one house was like the child that didn't want to listen. So if he was, his house was created and then suddenly he wasn't doing what she wanted him to do. And maybe if he had fallen in line, maybe he would be one of the lords. Maybe he would be a villain. But instead, he decided to go the other way. So while Ethan is going through this basically Disneyland of horror, going to all these different places and doing all these horrific things and stressful things, that this character has decided to sort of not be... like he doesn't have anywhere to go. Maybe he had a home, an estate, an area to be. And then when he turned on Miranda, she took that away from him. So he packed up this carriage and he's able to just sort of freely go throughout the whole world and basically show up in any of the four lords sort of territory. Mm. And he's impervious to them. So he can go to Heisenberg's factory and just set up shop, and Heisenberg can't do anything about it. Which I like. I like there's an element that sort of invincible element of the Duke makes him kind of powerful, because everybody talks about how friendly he is and how helpful he is. And he's funny and just kind of a nice guy. But there's something about his level of power and his level of knowledge that I think is really kind of interesting.
Yeah. And it kind of seems like he's going to back you up if anything happens when you're around him. If someone attacks you or something, he's going to back you up. Unlike the mention in Resident Evil 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. What I loved about that too was that, and they did this on purpose. They were so smart to do this, because see, the thing is, when I did that crazy sounding voice, that
guttural voice that sounded like this,
it's kind of distracting for one thing, but also they didn't want him to be obviously sinister in any way, because that's just boring. If you meet a character in the beginning and they're obviously sinister, you're just kind of like, all right, well, I know who they are and what their motivations are. But if you have a character that is really nice, but then every now and again he says stuff,
magic still lurks in this village.
You know, just the music of that line, the music, the sort of tone of it, it's really it makes you nervous, you know? And I used to get a lot of comments too early on. People would, I would see comments and people said like, this Duke's all right, but I don't know. I don't trust him. I just love that. I love that. That makes for an interesting character. Very similar to, and I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about other guy, but I'm gonna. Very similar to Dutch van der Linde.
Yep.
If Dutch van der Linde was an obvious villain from the very beginning, he would be the most boring character ever. But the fact that that Arthur Morgan has to work with him and has to be on his side, and then Dutch does something questionable and Arthur Morgan is in his gang and doesn't, you know what I mean? It makes for such a more interesting character. So if there is a turn at the end, the turn is more surprising. Now with the Duke, there was no turn, but see, that is the surprise. The Duke never tries to screw you over. The Duke never tries to hurt you. So by the end, after a player has played the game, that's why people love the Duke so much. And again, it's something that I didn't anticipate. I did not expect people to love this character so much. I'm absolutely thrilled. I mean, the fan community for Resident Evil is kind of blown away. I don't really know how to describe it. People have just been so positive and so kind, and it's doing a lot for my self-esteem, you know.
It's good. Yeah, you kind of answered my next question as well. So I was going to say, I saw a post on Reddit, and it said, I didn't think the Duke would live up to the Resident Evil 4's merchant, but he proved me wrong. I'd go as far as to say I love the Duke. And that subreddit has almost 6,000 upvotes so far. Last I checked 2 hours ago. And it's one of the most upvoted posts on Resident Evil subreddit. Even IGN wrote an article about it. And the Duke's popularity and all that. Were you expecting such a huge reaction to the character from the beginning?
Oh, yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, I had heard, you know, like, because obviously once I got this part, not even for a second could I talk to anyone about it at all. Not even my girlfriend, my family, anything like that. You know, you really have to keep it under wraps. Yeah. But I wanted so bad to sort of like talk to, I wanted to ask people that were familiar with the merchant from the fourth one and say like, you know, like what was that character like and how, you know, how was it received? But obviously I didn't. But yeah, I mean, I really just, even when I was recording it, because that's the thing too, is you don't really know. You're just trying to, or at least the way I do it as an actor, I'm just trying to solve a problem for the director. And the problem is they've got a character and they want the character to have a voice. So I come in there and I'm solving that problem for them. So I'm not the type of actor that likes to sort of think about my past and really think about, like, really get deep into it. I'm just like, no, what is the character doing right now and how am I going to do it? So when I'm in there recording it, it's just line after line. Thank you for your patronage. And you just say that like 5 times or whatever, and then you just kind of move on. And so I really did not, one of the producers told me she thought that the character was going to be a breakout character, was going to be a very beloved character. And I don't know, it's not like I didn't believe her or anything, but I just kind of thought, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not one to really like get my hopes up about anything. And also, the attention for this is wonderful. It's so positive and wonderful, but that's not what I was going for. Like as an actor, that's not what I'm going for is like trying to be famous or anything. I just want to, I happen to be uniquely qualified to be an actor, and I just want to do that for a living, and that's it. But if you do games like Resident Evil, obviously a lot of people are going to suddenly know who you are. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. But sometimes I kind of struggle with whether or not I deserve that or not. But then that's just my problem. It's nothing about me. The game is an incredible franchise and very beloved. And it would be very easy if they let me do that annoying voice that I wanted to do. Maybe the Duke wouldn't be as popular because you have to deal with him all the time. And every time he'd be like,
I can fix that for you.
It's just, you're sitting there playing it like, God, can somebody turn this down? You know, like, so I was not expecting it at all, but I'm absolutely thrilled. And I'm telling you, it has really been a learning experience for me to see how popular these characters get because of their function in the game. Because obviously Heisenberg and the Lady Dimitrescu and Moreau, these characters are so cool, and they're villains, and everybody loves a villain, you know. So I figured, you know, we've got a lot of amazing characters in this game. I wouldn't think that anybody would put as much attention on the Duke, but I'm just so pleasantly surprised and just, you know, so thrilled that's the case.
Okay. Is the Duke French by any chance?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that I think that the Duke is a Francophile. I think that he loves the French ways. He loves the language. And I think that, and it's funny because the motion capture director and one of the main directors who is working with me is a guy who lives in Japan, but he is French. And so whenever there would be French dialogue coming up, I would get really, really nervous because I didn't want to disrespect him and his country and his culture by mispronouncing the words. And of course, he wouldn't let me do that. I would get it right, but I would just say like, très bien. And then I would sort of sit there and be like, and then he would be like, okay, that was good. And I'm like, was that all right? Was that okay? And he'd be like, it was très bien. I'm like, oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. I got it. So yeah, I don't think he's French, but I think that he really is a man that enjoys the finer things. And the French definitely, and when it comes to food and things like that and good wine, they are definitely the purveyors of the finer things, you know.
All right. Do you know how every game has subtitles in different languages? How do they choose those languages? Because I've never seen a game that has Persian subtitles on it, and I know millions of people would be so excited, would be extremely happy if that would were to happen. And I candidate myself to do it for free if I knew how.
Yeah, no, I mean that is a really, really good question, and yeah, I mean, I have absolutely no idea how they choose that, and also how they choose it because, you know, of course there's subtitles, but then also sometimes the characters are dubbed in different languages. Yeah. And the Duke there was somebody that put out a super cut on YouTube of all the different languages that the Duke spoke, and that was really neat to kind of see. But I was kind of like, okay, Portuguese, French, German, Spanish. Okay, that's interesting, but then it kind of stopped. And then I was wondering, actually, because you had talked about this interview, you're going to put subtitles on the bottom of it. So then I did think, gosh, when he played that, were there any Persian subtitles? So to hear that there wasn't, I'm sorry that that's the case. But yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. You know, it'd be really interesting is if somebody created some kind of a software where you could do that for games, like a game could actually pay you to be able to do that, to be like, well, look, we've got this algorithm, we've got this software where we can recognize the lines and then immediately translate them into subtitles. You should do that. You should start a business.
Good idea, yeah.
Because, well, you know what? Actually, that segues into a question that I wanted to ask you, because you talked about in Iran, there's so many different Resident Evil fans. Yeah. There kind of always has been. And tell me about that. Tell me about the fan culture.
The population of the whole country, I think, is about 80 million. And there's at least 20 million gamers. Most of them are mobile gamers, but every single person that plays any games that I've seen in my entire life has loved the Resident Evil franchise. I've been playing it since I was, I think, 8 years old. And ever since then, I've loved every single game that came out. Recently, I think over the past 3, 4, 5 years, I'd say, streaming and content creation culture in Iran has been rising in popularity and all that. Ever since that Resident Evil game came out, you can see every single YouTuber in Iran, every single streamer that works on Twitch or YouTube, any platform, they're all talking about this game, they're all playing it. I know this streamer, he's been playing since the very first hour the game came out. He's been playing, first he finished it on hardcore, and then since then he's been playing it on Village of the Shadows difficulty, and it's so hard to finish it with that. He's speedrunning the whole thing over and over again, and so many fans in Iran. Such a game, you know, had Persian subtitles or were dubbed in Persian, many people will love it. The sales would increase definitely.
Yeah, well, I also think, I mean, like what you're all doing, what all the Twitch streamers are doing, what all the content creators are doing in the country, I think that's probably going to be very apparent. Because one thing is with Resident Evil, obviously it's a big franchise, but I'm not going to speak for them, but I think they are also a little bit surprised at how ravenous people are for this game. And I think that they are going to be learning a lot about their demographics. They're going to be learning a lot about different places in the world that play these games. So I think that the fact that there are so many fans and that they're making content and they're Twitch streaming it and they're going on Reddit and they're doing all this different stuff, I would encourage them all to keep doing that, because that is really helpful for these different game companies to realize, you know, Red Dead Redemption was really, really big in the Middle East, it seemed like. I mean, people really, really love. In fact, I am friends with Ben Davis, the guy that plays Dutch Vanderlyn.
Oh yeah, I saw a photo on your Instagram. Yeah,
and it's funny because we don't know each other through this work. I've known Ben for like 13 years or something. I know him. He was one of the first people that I met when I first arrived in town. And so I've been friends with him for all the time. In fact, the first time I ever hung out with him, he said that he had been working on this secret project that he couldn't talk about. And it just so happened to be the first Red Dead Redemption, because of course Dutch shows up at the end. Yeah. And then the entire time that he was working on the second one, I would see him, we would talk, and I had no idea. Because of, like a good actor, he kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything about it. But they worked on that game for like 10 years or something, maybe even more. I mean, it's incredible. And this game, I mean, I think Resident Evil, from the very start to whatever, I mean, it's like 7 or 8 years or something. I mean, I'm sure that there's developers working even before the game previous had even come out. And then, of course, as you know, seeing how the previous game performs, then of course, you know, maybe it'll inform their pre-production process, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just so thrilled. I think it's such an amazing thing. I have waking up this morning and, you know, having coffee and sitting on the couch with my girlfriend, and then realizing that in a little bit I was going to come in and speak to the people of Iran. I mean, it's amazing. You know, it's amazing. And I have to say that whoever's watching this, I want to speak for the rest of the cast and the rest of the people that made Resident Evil. We are just absolutely thrilled, so thrilled, and we're so grateful to have all of you as fans. And me personally, it means the world that so many people are getting so much enjoyment out of this game. It just blows my mind, and I'm just absolutely thrilled. And I would encourage the people of Iran to push for them to get Persian subtitles, because I think that they can figure out a way to make that happen. And in the future, yeah, I think somebody can figure out software to where they can put subtitles. They can do subtitles in any language for any of these games. I think that's I don't know for sure, but I at least I hope that that's coming soon.
All right, so I assure you, every single one of us is extremely proud and happy to hear what you just said. Thank you.
I'm also glad, I am also really glad that you talked about all these people in Iran that are Twitch streamers and that have channels and stuff. And I'm talking to you. You're the guy that has the interview, because I'm not going to I don't do a lot of these. Like you sent me a message and your message was very sincere and very kind. And it was very gentlemanly. So that's why I responded.
Can I have the Duke please say something to me, his Iranian fans, and also maybe say something in Persian that I will teach you?
Sure, I think,
I've been waiting for you, Puya.
Fuck, sorry.
All good.
I've been waiting for you, Puya. Anyone has heard of the likes of you. I would just like to say, from the bottom of my heart, if it's even there, or if it's not enlarged from all the food that I've been eating, thank you so much to the Iranian fans. Keep playing. But whatever you do, stop throwing bombs at the Duke.
Baba barikalla. That means good on you, or well done. Baba barikalla.
Baba barikalla.
That's it.
No, let me try it again. What is it?
Baba barikalla. Barikalla.
Baba barikalla.
Barikalla.
Baba barikalla.
Awesome.
I'm so sorry.
No, that was perfect.
You know what happened? I lost all my Iranian fans. I lost them all. Nobody wants to be my fan anymore.
They'll love you even more now, I promise.
I hope that I wish you the best in all your endeavors. And
thank you.
You are good at this. You're good at what you do. So
thank you.
Just keep doing it. And, I'm sure that we'll have an interview on the next one and the next one and the next one. Whatever game I do or whatever you see me do, just hit me up and I'll come back on here with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.